Mr. Hagman, the hour at 2 o'clock having arrived, we will start the State Allocation Board meeting of December 12th, the last meeting of the year. And before we all run off, I just want to thank everybody for their patience and willingness to work with staff. I want to thank staff for all the work they do throughout. I think this year, for me anyway, I saw staff that was working on more issues behind the scenes than we were doing at the beginning of the year last year. So I want to thank you guys for that and extend the gratitude to the districts that were willing to sit down with staff and resolve as many issues as possible. So I just want to, since I had the mic, I thought I'd express that. So thank you. Please, roll call.
Here.
Kathy Moore. Here. Cesar Diaz.
Here.
Peter Reyes.
Here, and also I'd like to extend that gratitude to my board members who are willing to take on committee assignments. So thank you. Thank you. Ms. Silverman. We've read the minutes. Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any comments from the public? Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. Any comments from board members? Any comments from public? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Hagman?
No.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Tab 3 is Executive Officer Statement. We have a few items to report to you tonight. The first item, which is a big reason why we're here today, is we're actually providing cash to projects that are sitting on the unfunded list, and those projects actually participate in the certification round. So tucked in tab 9 is the $383.8 million in projects that will be awarded cash, and that represents 196 projects. I know we had a certification round that ended over the summer, but what this represents is those folks that actually competed in certification, almost 93%, will have cash in their hands soon. So again, that's a great outcome. We actually have great outcomes in the program with the priorities and funding, which nearly 99% are successful. So again, we'll be mindful of the timelines associated with that. The next item, we actually are presented in the consent agenda, some unfunded approvals for 6 charter school projects, and that represents $5.2 million. These projects had the ability to move forward because we actually had bond authority as a result of decisions from the Career Tech program. So again, this is great news for those projects that have been waiting for quite some time. And once they receive an unfunded approval, they can participate in a priority funding process.
Okay.
And the next item we'd like to share is the priority of funding apportionments that we provided in October. There was $7.4 million that represent 7 facility hardship projects, and those projects have until January 22nd to come in. We have received fund release requests for all 6 to date for $7.1 million. There's one project that we've been reaching out to that still has to come in and perfect before January 22nd, and we understand that project will be coming in next week. The charter school program updates, as far as the fund release request, we did advise the board in October that nearly the $94.2 million that had been reserved for the charter program had been requested, and a member of the board had asked if there was any updates to share at a future meeting, if whether or not we receive additional requests from some charter schools and whether or not we have money available for them. We have received 2 projects that equate to $39.4 million, and we're in the process of processing those applications. So once those applications are presented to the board and provided unfunded approvals, then they can compete with everybody else in the priority of funding process. So we'll ensure those projects are understand the timelines associated with the certification round and ensure that they come in.
Thank you.
Few regulatory amendments. The regulations are in effect for priority of funding. The board did adopt a improvement to increase efficiency in the priority of funding. So those regulations are in effect as of December 6, 2012, and the goal was to create, to alleviate the gap that we had in the existing regulations. So the certification round will begin January 9th and close February 7th. And then that round will be open from February 8th to June 30th. And then, hence, another round will open up May 8th to June 7th, and again be valid from July 1st to December 31st, 2013. So again, to ensure there's no gaps with the CERT rounds. An item also we wanted to share is the emergency regulations are in effect as of November 1st, and I believe we did share that with our stakeholders and the board members as well. And what that means is once we receive projects in-house that exceed our bond authority, the board did take action to create a list, and that list, so for projects that came into house November 1st and moving forward, those projects will be placed on this information list, and staff will be presenting that next month. But the projects that came in between the regulations are in effect, those projects will actually be moving forward with true unfunded approvals. So there's almost $500 million between the new construction and modernization program that did come in prior to the regulations going into effect. So on page 10, continue with that discussion, we actually are moving forward some items in the consent agenda that will highlight in the financials that we are processing as well. The last update is the program review subcommittee. We'll be holding that January 16th.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from board members? Any public comment on the executive officer's report? Ms. Silverman, would you provide the board with an update on the Alvord Unified?
Yes, we will actually be bringing that forward in January for the appeal to be heard for the board.
Okay, thank you. We're moving to the consent agenda. If it's okay with the board, I suggest that we approve tab 9 as part of the consent agenda. So without, unless I hear otherwise, so is there a motion to move the consent plus tab 9? It's been moved. Is there a second by Mr. Diaz? Thank you. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Thank you.
I draw your attention to the financials on tab 5. What we want to highlight in the interest of time is the status of fund release report. Direct your attention on specifically page 168. We've been highlighting to the board once we have a bond sale that we introduce various charts. And on top of 168, again, the announcement of the October bond sale, where we actually received a significant amount of money, $363.9 million. And again, a new chart's been introduced, and once we provide those projects with apportionments, we'll be highlighting how the funds will be released. So we haven't released any funds because they haven't been apportioned, but again, there'll be a timeline associated with that and drawdown as well. In the chart below, we wanted to share that $22.2 million have been released for the month of October. We had a turnaround time of November 15th is kind of where the information we're providing you. We didn't have a November meeting, so likewise, we're just giving you an update on that release. Not sure if we want to highlight some of the projects on page 170. Routinely, we've been providing the board some timelines associated with projects that have, again, timelines come in for projects, again, to complete their fund release requests. So we are showing here in January we have 3 projects worth $500,000 that need to come in. Likewise, when we come in next month, you'll see a much larger chart, which represents the new projects that will be receiving apportionments. And again, those projects have to come within a 90-day timeline. So some more information to follow. With that, I don't have any, if you guys have any questions, we can move on.
Are there any public comments, questions from board members? Okay, moving on.
Okay, draw your attention to tab 6, which is the status of funds. A few items we wanted to highlight. We are actually on the other column. There's an estimated approval column, which is next to the remaining bond authority. With that, we wanted to share with the board that with the consent approval tonight, there is a reinstatement of the Clovis project for the Career Tech Education of $1.6 million, and that is being posted. And also, we're converting a charter school project for $23.6 million in the Proposition 1D category. Also, respectively, in the unfunded approvals, new construction at $500,000 we're approve tonight. One modernization project for $13.9 million. We actually have 6 career tech projects, again, like we shared, of $5.2 million. The $26.4 million is that reserve of preliminary apportionments for the charters, and again, that is going to be credited back along with the offset. So we'll have some additional funds in the charter program. So a net result of 9 projects being approved on one column and 2 projects being approved on the other column. So 11 projects approved in total in Proposition 1D. In the middle category is the approvals for new construction. That represents 6 projects. And there's no activity in Proposition 47, and there's also no activity for the emergency repair program. So in total, we actually are processing slightly over $45 million this month. So this does not reflect the true unfunded approvals. These are just true applications that are processed within the bond authority. Also on page 181, we wanted to highlight to the board a new chart related to the true unfunded approvals. Takes time to get there. On page 181 is, I know it's a really large cylinder, but there's $76.8 million that represents 33 projects in the modernization category that has been processed as true unfunded approvals this month. As I shared earlier, that we have nearly $500 million between new construction and modernization. As we start going along and processing those applications, since they're still in the pipeline, there'll be more additions moving forward. With that, I don't know if we have any questions.
Any questions from board members? Comments from the public? Seeing none, we're moving on.
Tab 7.
Tab 7. Simi Valley.
Good afternoon, Barbara Kampminer with the Office of Public School Construction. Behind tab 7, we have the item related to the appeal from the Simi Valley Unified School District. In this item, the district had originally submitted an application for conceptual approval of a seismic mitigation program project that was returned by the OPSC. The application had met all the requirements of the program with one exception, and that is that the cost estimate to repair the facility was in excess of 50% of the cost to replace the facility. And according to current and past interpretation of the SFP regulations, projects with repair costs in excess of the 50% threshold are funded as replacement projects. The intent of the regulations is to ensure that there's a good return on the funds that the state provides for the projects. However, in this case, the district is facing a unique circumstance because the facility in need of repair is a historical landmark. And the district feels that to demolish and replace this building would cause community and political backlash. Therefore, while they're eligible for replacement based on the 2011-2012 enrollment of 317 pupils, they are requesting that the board provide the rehabilitation funds instead. While staff doesn't feel that there is any flexibility in the regulations, we did take a look at the education code for the seismic mitigation program, and we do feel that the statute may provide the board with more options. Under the statute, the district is eligible for replacement, but it doesn't actually say that they must do replacement. There's no language that would require it. So options today for the board include granting the district's appeal. If the district's appeal is not granted, the district would still be eligible to apply under the program for a replacement project instead. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Buchanan.
Is there a representative from the district here?
Come forward, sir. Please have a seat and identify yourself for the record.
My name is Michael Clare. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business and Facilities with Simi Valley Unified School District.
So this is my issue. I can vote to approve the appeal because I can understand your need or your desire to want to preserve a historical building, you know, and I'm sure it keeps you in good stead with the city and the greater community and makes sense. However, I also know that when you get into renovating older buildings, there's all kinds of unforeseen conditions that can come up. So I would like to approve this, but also note in whatever letter or whatever you sign with OPSC that the state's contribution is limited to the 1.7 whatever billion, because you need to know going in with eyes wide open that there could be, you know, unforeseen circumstances that come up, and it's not where we're going to have an open-ended checkbook here for it.
No, that's understood. We expect to have surprises, but we don't expect the state to pay for those surprises.
Right. I just wanted to be clear. I don't know where the other members are on that.
Mr. Buchanan, for clarification, when you say you approve this, you're approving the request that we fund the...
Request that we would provide the funding and allow them to apply it to modernizing the historical building instead of replacing the building with new construction. Right? That's what they're asking us to.
Okay, the appeal from them is...
The appeal is to, is for rehabilitation funding, which is approximately $1.7 million. The replacement funding for the project would be based on the pupil enrollment and would involve a prorate and would be...
But my understanding is that normally we would require replacement because it exceeds an amount. Instead of replacement, they want the rehabilitation funding, which, but I just want to be sure there's a, and I'm okay with that, I just want to be sure that there's a cap on that so we don't find $3 million worth of unforeseen conditions and you know, there's...
Well, we're willing to work with staff to...
Does that clarify?
I get your, I understand your motion now, and I'm not there with you on that one.
Okay.
Mr. Hagman.
Well, and I have some questions too. When someone declares a historical site, is that a local decision, or is that to go through a state process on that?
It's a Ventura County landmark from 1990, I believe. How that process took place, I couldn't tell you.
And my only concern is we do have to watch our pennies, and I don't mind paying the $900,000 toward it, but if a community decides this building's a landmark for a particular reason or the other, I think the community should be kicking in for maybe the difference, and that's not an option for me today. So I don't know how to get there because I don't want to make you go to the back of the line and start all over again for new construction approval or anything like that. I just don't know if it's a local decision on a regular standpoint. Why not more communities say this is my historical building for one reason or the other, even if it's older, and it's going to keep raising those costs for us. And what we're looking for, does it add to the quality of education for the students? That's the main point I try to filter everything through. Does having a historical building on the campus add anything to the educational process versus building them a new building? That I don't know. I can understand why the community wants to keep it. I understand the historical significance and the importance of all that. And I do, from coming from local government, realize that there's certain things that I want to preserve and protect and all the rest of it. Is that a state obligation at that point? And where's the lines on that? I don't know.
So for me, it's the restoration of this building or retrofitting this building exceeds half the cost to build the new building to which they would be eligible for. If you were to demolish this building now and build it back up in its current square footage, it would exceed what they would be entitled to. So I would be comfortable giving them for purposes of retrofitting, half of what the cost would have been for building the building they would otherwise qualify for. And so that is
After
less.
the full amount.
To replace it.
That's a different.
To build the building new, I understand it's under $1 million.
Yeah. So if it's going to cost, if our responsibility would be 1.7 to retrofit the building, but to construct the building that they would be eligible for is, I'm just throwing out a number, we don't know what it is at this point, it would be 1.6. I would support the 1.6, not the 1.7.
I think that's fine. If you look, it says the estimated cost for replacement is $3,485,000. Estimated cost to retrofit is $3,474,000. So it's within $11,000. So I think if we want to, under your proposal, the difference is $5,500, right?
I think it's more than that. Go ahead.
Right.
When we do the replacement option, we base it on the enrollment at the school site, and the enrollment for the 2011-12 school year was 317 pupils. Now, my understanding is that the school site has 23 classrooms on it, excuse me, today, and using the state loading standard, the enrollment of 317 pupils would justify 13 classrooms. So some of the space inside the facility in question would need to be prorated based on the enrollment. So the number would not be equal to the full amount.
The square footage that we'd be...
So help me, when we go down here to, those are the costs that are listed. When we go down here, approving this option would result in conceptual approval of rehabilitation project, an estimated share of $1,737,000. That represents what?
That's the rehabilitation cost, which is done off of a cost estimate for the
Okay.
actual repairs that would be necessary.
So whereas right now, the cost of retrofitting, we look at it as pretty close to what would be new construction, but that comparison is the same square footage.
Right.
And under the student population, they would not be eligible for the same square footage. So the square footage would have to go below what we have here. And that's why my recommendation would be to have staff go back and look to see what that square footage ought to be, what the cost would be, and then give them half of that, which is the 50%, for them to do the retrofitting. And then with your same provision that, and if you discover that the adobe blocks that you have in there are not seismic and you need to replace with cinder blocks, that's on them.
So
Do you have an estimate of what that number
right,
is?
that's what it's-
It's roughly about $900,000.
That sounds like came in the 900.
State
Yeah.
share. That's the state share, but those are very
I just
preliminary
want to make sure
numbers.
we are all on the same page.
And let me ask the district, if we were to come up with 900,000, instead of building new, you got that as almost like a block grant to either do your local choice, either to retrofit your historic building or to build new. Do you think you would get support from either the district or the local community to do what you wanted to do for the balance? Or is it option C really not going to help you at all, one way or the other?
It would certainly help in the decision for our governing board, who hasn't made a decision yet. They're waiting to hear what the state is willing to provide on this project. They're still weighing that, and it's a difficult decision because, quite frankly, some of those board members attended that school. So that makes it more interesting for us. I realize that has nothing to do with the allocation board or our funding request, but just politically speaking. So the board is waiting to hear what this board is willing to provide. Is it acceptable? I think it would be, yes.
And can I ask the council, is there a method to this, what we're trying to accomplish at this point? Is there regs for us and able to do this? It's that, basically calculate what they are eligible for and apply that to that project on that school site, but not necessarily identifying what that project is at this point, because you're going to have to make that local decision, come up with the extra funding if you're going to retrofit, or if you're going to build new, you would have that matching fee to go up. So we give them a limit. Let's say we pick the number, whatever it ends up being, 900,000. And we say, okay, the board directs staff to work this out for 900,000 toward their solution, but it's also contingent on what they do locally. Can we do that? If so, I'll make the motion.
I have one more question to ask. The 1.7 million in here, if they were building new, would they get that amount, or would they get?
They get the
They wouldn't get that
900,000.
amount. So that number's kind of because if they were getting building new, they would only get the amount based on the 314 students or
Correct.
whatever.
Right.
So that number is sort of what is
That
that
number
number?
requests it's the rehabilitation request, so that's what the district is
So that
appealing.
reflects the request. It doesn't reflect part of the options of what.
If the
what
board
you're
were to
asking us
grant
to
the district's
approve.
appeal as submitted
Right.
for rehabilitation funding, that number would be accurate based on the cost estimate that's provided at this stage of the project. So that number has been verified by OPSC using the cost
So under
estimate. but
under
it's-
what conditions would they be eligible? What you're telling me is if they tore it down, we would give them money for 314 pupil grants. If you modernize, they'd get money for 314
The rehabilitation is not based on the pupil grants, it's based on the facility itself, and because there's
And
classrooms.
under what condition would they be eligible for the 1.7?
If the cost of the
$1 million.
retrofitting did not exceed 50% of the new construction.
So that's sort of a non-number then.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there was this, it doesn't enter into any eligibility in terms of being eligible for that number.
Not for replacement, but if what the district's request was for that number under rehabilitation.
I just want to, I know I'm beating a dead horse here. So if the district were, if this were a normal modernization, they would get pupil grants for 314 to modernize.
For replacement
Modernization
only.
grants.
For replacement only.
Wait, no.
Right.
If,
Under normal modernization, it would be pupil grant based, but because this is a facility hardship under the Seismic Mitigation Program,
Right.
it's based on the actual costs as opposed
Okay.
to any sort of pupil grant driven formula. So we look
The
at the cost
seismic piece.
estimate for the seismic retrofit, and that cost estimate drives the funding.
so let me try and restate this. Maybe everyone understands it better than I do. If it were a normal modernization, they would get pupil grants, okay? If it were a replacement, they'd get pupil grants based on the 314 students to replace. Because this is seismic, they're eligible for 50% of the cost of the rehabilitation to make it, to meet the seismic requirements. Is that where?
Right,
The
unless,
1.7 million
unless
fits
that
in.
cost exceeds half of what it costs to rebuild.
Right.
And
Okay.
since this
Based on
one
the pupil
kicks that, then kicks it to the next level.
So if it's based on the cost to rebuild, instead of getting the 50% under the seismic, they would get the pupil grant amount
Correct.
under the other. So the dollars amounts for that is roughly $900,000 under modernization. If they were eligible to rehabilitate it, it would be the 1.7 something million dollars. And if it were a new construction, they would get the 314, I can get it on my phone, times whatever the per pupil grant is.
Yeah, I mean,
50 per, yeah.
in simple terms, and again, what we're talking about is the current criteria in not just seismic, but facility hardship. Depending on what it costs to replace, if it costs more to rehabilitate than it does to replace the building, you get kicked into the replacement calculation. The replacement calculation, it's, again, regulation-driven. They qualify for the approximate $800,000. If they're below, in other words, if the cost to rehabilitate is less than 50% of the replacement, then they're in the rehabilitation calculation, which would be the 1.7.
I'm just trying to figure out what.
Yes.
Has there been any situation that's come up on this issue before or a similar circumstance to deal with this?
I think what the request before the board today is that they qualify for replacement, but they're asking to use they're asking to get rehabilitation funding. We have not seen that, not something that's come before the board. Generally, if they qualify for replacement, they replace the building. Districts don't generally pursue rehabilitation if they qualify for replacement. We haven't seen that.
Ms. Moore?
So if they replace the building, would they receive more funding than if they are going to rehabilitate the building as they're requesting?
No.
They would
No.
receive less?
They receive less
All right.
based on the current criteria.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I did get the nod from the legal counsel that we can make that option, and that would be my motion is to, my only technical question is, does it come out of the seismic retrofit funds, or does it come out of a different pot of money? Can we direct it to come out of the seismic since?
It would come out of the seismic
Okay, good, because
funding.
we have a little more flexibility there. So I make the motion that to the maximum you can connect as far as the rehabilitation, half of the 50%, roughly the 800 to 900,000, that we give staff authority to work that out with the school district, and either they get it kind of as a grant toward, and when they get locally for that facility, we don't want to see it diverted to a new school or anything like that, but either replace the building or build next door to it or rehabilitate the one you have.
Mr. Having, point of clarification, does your motion memorialize that if they, in the process of retrofitting, they discover that in fact one of the walls, the weight-bearing walls needs to be redone,
It's a fixed amount.
It's a fixed
So whatever above that amount,
Yeah, so
they
you-
have to work that out with their local community and their local city council and school board to see if that's worth it to them as a community to keep that building in shape. So whatever the maximum amount we could calculate on their behalf, the
Council, you
800,000.
wanna- You okay, or?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to recommend to request from their board, from the district's board, a resolution stating that this is is the maximum amount that they're going to get from the state.
Okay.
So when you guys make a decision, you can give it
Yes,
back. a
that's
report.
fine.
And this issue will come back next month for actual approval with a dollar amount, Mr. Mireles?
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Next month, we would come back with an item that would delineate the actual cost, just like we would with any other facility hardship or seismic item as part of the consent.
Between then and now, we hopefully have that resolution so we can, okay, thank you. It's been moved in second.
January.
Any additional questions? Comments from the public on this item? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Tab 8 was withdrawn. Tab 9 was part of the consent. Tab 10.
Tab 10 is is our 90-day workload under the report section.
There is no action item. Any questions? Tab 11.
I think we're about done.
That's it.
It's actually on page 457 is a preliminary agenda.
Agenda for the board meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Our next meeting is January 23rd.
So just for folks in the audience that follow us, right now we're meeting monthly except for November or when we can't get a quorum. And the thought is, as the money starts to dry out, we may not need to meet monthly. So we may be going to every other month or quarterly. But at this point, we'll keep the agenda on for a monthly meeting. But just know, but we'll give everybody plenty of heads up of what we're proposing to do, and is be the, whether or not we meet, it would be something that the vice chair and the chair can work out based on workload before us. Just wanted to kind of throw that out for digestion until next meeting, and I'm sure I'll hear from some of you. Next board meeting, we will have probably the chairs and vice chair elections. It's not in here, but just also to let everybody know. Anything else? Anything from me? Happy holidays. Happy holidays. Any comments from the public before we
have a
adjourn?
meeting on the 19th, right?
16.
16. Comments from the public before we adjourn? Seeing none. Thank you. Happy holidays. Be safe. Safe travels. See you next year.
2:30.